This presentation is a follow-up to my previous presentations on world age ending cycles, and in the previous presentations I did, I showed you that there was a very specific alignment pattern which has caused us a lot of destruction in the past, and that's an alignment of Mars, Venus, the Sun and Mercury targeting close to the galactic centre, whilst simultaneously the Sun, the Earth and the Pleiades are in close alignment. And I showed you that instances of this pattern correspond to disasters that we've had stretching back to some 13,000 years into the past, near to the end of the last ice age. Now, what I'm going to get at in this video, what I'm going to now reveal, is that the ancients appeared to have special calendar systems that allowed them to actually determine precise instances of this conjunction pattern. And the calendar systems in question are the Mayan Aztec calendar round long count system. Okay, these are the calendars from the Indians of the Americas. They appear to have a series of calendar systems which allowed them to target with high precision centuries or even millennia in advance instances of this highly destructive alignment. Okay, now the destruction involved takes many forms, and I've already detailed some of these things, and I'm going to summarize them as we go into this new video here. So this is a very technical video, but if you are into precise details and you want to know how the ancients themselves targeted these destructive events, this is exactly the video for you. Okay, now in saying that, if you go to my website, and the link's in the description box, I am going to do a series of essays with images of this particular series on world age cycles. So if you prefer this information in terms of written documents and images as opposed to videos, you can get that from my website. So by all means, the link is in the description box. And I will just make one other thing as well aware to you. These presentations take a long time, and I am putting them out there essentially for free, and I've got many more to come. I invest in cryptocurrencies, by the way, and I've got to tell you, they're going down like crazy. But that said, I am trying to accept donations in cryptocurrencies regardless. And also, if you want to really help out, go to my website and buy my book direct. So I've got links for cryptocurrency donations in my website on the front page and also in the bottom of this video here. So it would really help out if you could donate some money to me just to help fund the research here. Even though my investments are going down, I have to say, guys, I'm making the greatest discoveries of my life, you know, over the past year or so. So I'm going to try and put out more information of this type. We'll leave it there for now though, and let's get on with the presentation. So just to summarize then, guys, when we have certain special planetary alignments, we have certain very exotic destructive effects that can occur within the solar system. And I showed you in the previous presentation the core world age ending alignment pattern. And you can see on screen then a list of the main effects that we have that I discussed. We have geophysical effects caused by the simultaneous resonant agitation of the celestial bodies within the solar system, and this can produce heightened seismic activity planet-wide and a temporary disruption to the axial rotation speed and or orientation of the planets. We can then have the ignition or energetic activation of the inner planets to develop cometary properties. Long cometary tails can be temporarily established, and this with regards to the planets themselves. Okay, known planets can develop cometary tails. We can also have significant chunks of matter blasted off into space from electromagnetic hotspots that develop on the surface of the bodies, especially the inner planets like Mercury and Venus. We can then have changes to the Sun. Energy output changes, its light waves develop coherency, and they can even, via destructive interference, cancel one out. This can cause the Sun to change colour and even temporarily switch off as a visible emitter of light. Now these were all the effects that I discussed in the previous presentations. Now what I'm going to discuss here then is this specific core pattern that you can see on screen. I'm going to show you how the Mayan calendars, the long count and the calendar round, were actively used to target instances of this pattern very precisely using these systems. Now I showed you previously the complete cycle is 4,497 years, and that this is always a recurring interval, but within this there are 4 sub-intervals, okay? The first one is 1183 years, the pattern occurs then after 1343 years, then again after 1183 years, and then we have the short interval of 788 years before it occurs again. These are all sidereal years because the pattern is tied into background stars. In this case, precession is a factor. Now when you look at astronomy software then and look at the core pattern itself, an alignment of Mars, Venus, the Sun and Mercury targeting near to the galactic centre, whilst simultaneously we have the Sun, the Earth and the Pleiades in close alignment. If you actually look at when this pattern has occurred previously in history, you will see these dates here. Now these dates go off into the future as well as into the past. The last time it occurred was in 1345 here, and these are the previous dates, and the next instance is 2528, and then going off into the future up to 5842. If you look then at the table, you can see how staggered it is, okay? So in the 1345 event here, what we have, if we go back in time 788 years, it then last occurred before that in 557 AD, and this is associated with certain destructive events that led to the onset of the Dark Ages, okay? Now as I said then, this particular pattern itself is tracked and mapped in time via the long count system, generally associated with the Maya, and the calendar round, which is itself associated mainly with the Aztecs. In order to understand both of these systems, we might want to look at the basic Western calendar system. We have 3 particular intervals or dials: day, month and year. If we think about the beginning of the calendar going back some 2,000 years, we start out with day 1 of month 1, which is January, year 1, AD, okay? Now months can be, when we look at February, the shortest month can be as low as 28 days, and then we have several months which are at 31 days. So you just basically go through the day column until you reach the maximum number of the month. You then reset it to the number 1 and carry 1 forwards to the month, okay? And then you build up the months towards 12 months. And then when you get to the 12th month, you go back to the number 1 and you add a 1 in the year column and just build it all up. Now the long count calendar that we're going to consider here is itself based upon 5 particular cycles, and they are not days, months and years as we'd understand them. Certainly the lowest cycle is the day, but the rest are quite an abstraction if you want to put it that way. Now what we presently know about the long count is essentially based upon the study of various stone carvings which are from the area of Guatemala and also Mexico, modern day countries as they are now. And these stone carvings were created many centuries ago, even going back some 2,000 years. And they are very elaborate, as you can see in these images here, and they have a series of dots and dashes, okay? And from a very careful study of these specific stone carvings, the scholars themselves who looked at them deduced that they had effectively encoded in this elaborate series of dots and dashes a particular date stamp. They were basically imprinting dates on these particular stones, or stela as they are called. It's a bit like when we think about tombstones. We have the date when somebody dies, the day, the month and the year. In a way, they were doing something very similar. They were carving precise dates on these stones, usually when some very notable event occurred in terms of an astronomical alignment or perhaps some king ascending to rulership. Now the dots and the dashes correspond to specific numbers going from 0 to 19. So for example, you can see that each dot here represents a single day, and a dash or a bar represents 5 days, and this is where we get 3 bars and 4 dots representing the number 19, okay? So they found then that there were specifically 5 different time cycles associated with a long count, and they are as follows. They are called the kin, the uinal, the tun, the katun and the bakton. The kin is equal to 1 day, the uinal 20 days, 1 ton is 360 days, 1 katon 7200 days, and 1 bakton 144,000 days. And this is the largest cycle that there is. And you can look at the readout here as depicted in terms of a series of dials, where the kin, which is the smallest or shortest time cycle, is here at the right hand side up to the bakton, which is the largest. And the way that the entire calendar system would work would be something as follows. Firstly, you'd build up 1 day at a time the maximum number of kin that you can count, 19. 1 day later, you zero the kin and then carry one across into the uinal column. So this is equal to 20 days, okay, because 1 uinal is 20 days. You build up again the maximum number of kin, 19. The maximum number of uinals is 17, okay. 1 day later, you zero those two. You've now got a 1 in the ton column. This readout here represents 360 days because it's 1 ton. Going further, you max out the columns again as follows here. 1 day later, zero all these three. 1 is carried over into the katon column. This represents 7200 days. Once again, you max them out. You can only have 19 katons maximum. 1 day later, you now have 144,000 days, a 1 in the bakton column, and all the rest are zeros. And if you keep on doing this, you will build up extra baktons. So you go from 1 bakton to 2 and to 3. That's basically how the calendar itself is meant to function. Now you can see here then, we've got various archaeological sites, mainly in Mexico and Guatemala. And again, if you look at, say, one face of one of these stone monuments, it might have a particular date stamp, a number representing each of the 5 columns. So for this particular stela here in Guatemala, stela 1, you'll see that there are 4 particular dates. In other words, you've got 4 sides of the stela, and you're going to have a date stamp on each of the 4 sides. And this one here, for example, the beginning one is 7 baktons, 18 katons, 9 tons, 7 uinal, and 12 kin. Okay, so this is just what you get from looking at various stelas. These are the specific dates on. And further to this, if you add up all the days, you essentially get an absolute day count number, the total number of days imprinted on each calendar itself. Each particular date is marked, okay? And you can think about these going all the way back to a theoretical 0 readout date. And indeed, the 0 readout date is very important as we proceed. So this basically is what we have in terms of the long count. But what about the calendar round? This is usually associated with the Aztecs. And I can also tell you that the very same stelas, the stone carvings that you just saw there, they not only contain long count dates, they also have carved onto them calendar round dates right beside them, okay? This is because the long count and the calendar round are component parts of one unified calendar system, okay? They are to be used in conjunction with one another, being tracked alongside one another. But they have a character which is very, very different. So if we look at the Aztec calendar round then, this is a lot more basic. It's composed of 2 cycles. One is the Zolkin, which is 260 days, and the other one is called the Hab, and 1 Hab is equal to 365 days. Now that is tantalizingly close to the length of the standard solar year, but trust me, there's no connection. Basically, what we have then is a resynchronization after a certain number of days. So what they did was they started counting Hab and Zolkin together. They started the counts together. And what happens is, after precisely 73 Zolkins, 73 times 260 days, you get 18,980 days counted. Likewise, you will have also counted in this same particular interval a full 52 cycles of the Hab. Okay, so they resynchronize after you've counted 18,980 days. Okay, you'll have counted precisely 73 Zolkin and 52 Hab. This is equal to 1 full calendar round. Now they are meant to be counted in succession, one after the other, without adjustment, for very special intervals of time. So let's go back then to the specific world age ending configuration. The long count and the Aztec calendar round are both used to map time with respect to targeting and harmonizing the cycles of the backtons and the calendar round cycle with instances of this particular conjunction. And this is a very destructive conjunction, as detailed in the previous presentations. Here then, what we're going to consider are instances of this alignment within this particular interval, a full 4,497 sidereal years. And this is from the last time that this particular pattern occurred, in 1345, all the way back to 3153 BC. So we have 5 instances of the conjunction itself and 4 subintervals. The 4 intervals then are the intervals between instances of the alignment. Now what you'll tend to find then is that the ancients, the Maya themselves, they had to, when they were considering this alignment in its complexity, they had to basically make a determination as to what constituted the optimum alignment. They had to choose one particular conjunction pattern within this alignment for the basis of their calendar. And what they chose was a Mars-Venus-Sun connection. In other words, when we are looking at the precise time and setting the precise time of this conjunction, we refine it in terms of the optimum Mars-Venus-Sun connection. So you're going to have slight inaccuracies in terms of where Mercury is with respect to this alignment here, and also with respect to the Sun-Earth-Pleiades connection. You have to choose 3 bodies, 3 items, and refine it in terms of an optimum conjunction. Let's look at some precise screenshots then. In this case, I'm going to make use of the Starry Night computer package, okay? Now, in order for people to be able to correctly reconstruct my work, I do need to say something about dating, okay? You're going to see a lot of dates. I'm going to give you precise dates in terms of standard calendar dates, in terms of a day, month, and a year. But I'm also going to give you the Julian day numbers that correspond to the calendar dates, okay? Now, the Julian day number system is a continuous count of days since the beginning of the Julian period, and it's used primarily by astronomers. So basically, we had somebody decide that the date, the 1st of January, 4713 BC, at 12 noon Universal Time, which is GMT, will be set to day 0. This is the 0 readout for an absolute count of days going off into the future in terms of positive numbers and going back into the past in terms of negative numbers. So if we just look at a few random dates here, so to speak, the 4th of July 1776 AD, at 12 noon, the precise number of days from the date, which is the beginning of the Julian day system, 1st of January 4713 BC, the total number of days from 0 right to the 4th of July is this number here. It's 2,369,916. If we go into the past, the 21st of September 5000 BC, again at 12 noon, it's a minus figure. It's minus 104,563 days. Now you'll notice we have 5 figures after the decimal point. Within a standard day there are precisely 86,400 seconds in total, okay, in 24 hours. So any deviation from a precise 12 noon time, okay, like in this last example here, where we have the 6th of August 2018, we have 20 hours, 10 minutes and 31 seconds. The difference from 12 noon, in this case it will be 8 hours, 10 minutes and 31 seconds, is what the 0.34064 is right here on the end. So we have these very precise dates here. Now the reason I'm telling you all this is because different astronomy packages do things a bit differently. Some packages have a year 0, some don't. Some packages take the Gregorian calendar system, which came into being in 1582, and they extend it backwards from that day, when in fact we were under the Julian system. So I'm basically telling you the Julian day numbers alongside the calendar dates, so that if anybody wants to check my work and your system uses a different dating in terms of calendar dates than Starry Night, you just plug in these precise Julian day numbers. When I'm also looking at the time separation between various different dates, I'll be subtracting one Julian day number from another in order to do this. Again, it's all for precision. So this is just housekeeping, me telling you all this. So, with all that said then, let's just go forward with the alignment analysis. Here then is the first alignment. This is the instance of the destructive alignment of Mars, Venus, the Sun and Mercury, targeting close to the galactic centre. And simultaneously, the Sun, the Earth and the Pleiades are closely aligned, okay? Now you can see then we have the precise calendar date here for the optimum of this configuration with respect to Mars, Venus and the Sun. And this is why Mercury is just slightly offset, okay? So here we have then the precise Julian day number. This is because the time here, 13 hours 59 minutes, it basically differs 1 hour and 59 minutes from 12 noon, and that's what this refers to here just after decimal point, the 08264. So this particular alignment here then is what was previously discussed as being associated with the destructive alignment of the cometary fragment hitting the Mediterranean. This was a major event in world history where we had a global catastrophe of note, all triggered by this configuration which caused all of these exotic effects. Now if we move from a top-down view, we can see how the different planets are aligned. In this case, firstly, we're going to look from the centre of the Sun outwards. You can see then Venus and Mars right on top of one another. This is because the configuration is optimized in terms of the Sun, Venus and Mars. And you can see the Earth here very close to the Pleiades. It usually dances around the Pleiades. It's usually not precisely aligned to it at all times when this conjunction occurs. It can sometimes be very precise and sometimes a few days either way. In this case, it's about 3 degrees or so from the exact alignment with the Pleiades. Moving on then, we can actually switch position to the centre of Mars, and this allows us to look down the line to the conjunction near to the galactic centre. So now we can see Mercury, which was actually behind the Sun in the previous viewpoint. You can see it here just off to the side, and Venus itself just under the Sun. Now what I mean with regards to an optimized Mars-Venus-Sun alignment can be seen when we go further in. Basically, the angular separation between the centre of the Sun and the centre of Venus is at its minimum. For this particular alignment, it's at 54 minutes of arc. So basically, from the viewpoint of the centre of Mars, this line connecting the two will be at 90 degrees here to what is the orbital plane or path of Venus itself. Here then is a summary table of the 5 instances of this alignment from 1345 to 3153 BC. I'm not going to show you screenshots of all of them because they're all very similar, okay? You can see here though in yellow all the precise dates, all optimized in terms of the Sun, Venus, Mars alignment, okay? And you can see the angular separation between the Sun and Venus from the viewpoint of Mars, as I've just shown you in that last slide. That one showed it as 54 minutes of arc. You can see all the others, they're all very slight, just under 1 full degree. Now the most important thing to note then are the interval values between the 5 instances of the conjunction pattern. So these are the values here in green, okay? You can see the first one is 432,096.12778 days. And this is very close to the third one listed here. The other ones here are slightly different, but it's important to realize that the interval that is the Bacton unit has a very close harmonization to these here. Now the most important values of this table are those in green here, which are the intervals between the 5 instances of the alignment. And you can see they are all just slightly off whole numbers of days. For calendrical purposes, the Mayan people essentially refined these values here as follows, by either rounding them up or down to achieve a whole number of days. They did this to achieve the following values you can see here in green again. 432,096 days, 490,530 days, another repeat of 432,096 days, and the final one here, 287,840 days. Now, if you are thinking mathematically and you recall, the back-ton unit of the long count is 144,000 days. 3 back-tons is 432,000 days dead on, which is only 96 days different from this one. 2 back-tons is 288,000 days dead on, which is 160 days different to this interval here. And this is crucial. This is why the back-ton unit is the largest cycle, okay? It was chosen specifically for its close harmonization to this value here, the 432,096, and to this value here, the 287,840 days. This one here is significantly different because the long count itself was not used to primarily target or cover this interval. The calendar round had primacy, but that's another story. Now that being said though, let us look at exactly how the ancient Mayan people actively used both the long count and the calendar round. In this case, we're going to look at the precise interval here, the first interval, to cover from the 2nd of October 3153 BC to the 8th of October 1970 BC. The specific interval then is 432,096 days. We're going to look at exactly how the long count and calendar round was used to cover this precise time interval here between the two instances of the alignment between these two dates. To begin then, you can see the Julian day number here associated with the date itself, okay? Now the time interval itself is approximately 1183 sidereal years, but as I've said, it's precisely 432,096 days. Now here's the thing. This interval here is precisely 96 days greater than 432,000 exact, which would harmonize to 3 back-tons. So what exactly did the Mayan people do? Well, quite simply, what they did was they maintained a 0 readout of the long count and had a special independent count of 96 days from the alignment itself. This took them to the 6th of January 3152 BC. This then was the 0 readout of the long count just before the calendar commenced, because 1 day later, on the 7th of January, you then add a 1 in the kin column and begin the count. And this is exactly what they did. They went on to count through the entire mechanism of the long count to achieve a 3 back-ton readout, and this perfectly synchronized with the next instance of the alignment on the 8th of October 1970 BC. And this is what it's all about. This is a destructive alignment, okay? They want to know when it's going to happen, so they deliberately configure their calendar system in terms of their major cycles, in terms of the long count's back-ton unit, to harmonize at the end point, okay? They have to have an adjustment of 96 days, then they set the calendar in motion, harmonizing a full cycle in terms of achieving 3 back-tons with the actual destructive alignment itself. And this is what all of these world age ending calendars are all designed to do, okay? They're all designed to get you from one alignment to another. And you usually need adjustments that you need to count a special amount of days at the start of it before you can start counting your cycles, be they the units of the long count or the calendar round or even a basic 360-day calendar, which we're going to get into in future presentations. Now suffice it to say then, this is exactly how the long count was actively used by the Mayan people themselves. And when I showed you previously these stone pillars, and I said to you, you've got all these dates stamped on it, okay? I spoke about what is the true 0 readout day. Well, the true readout day before the count commences is this date here, which is the 6th of January, okay? It's day 96 following the alignment itself. This is the readout of 0 before the count commences. Now, how exactly then did they use the calendar round alongside the long count? Well, if we just look again at how many days there are in the calendar round, 18,980, you can actually determine how many full calendar rounds will fit into the interval. In this case, a simple division reveals that we would have 22 cycles in full with a remainder of 14,536 days. So we can only count a maximum number of 22 full cycles within the interval. Now, what the Aztecs and the Maya did, they did not start counting the cycles of the calendar round at the same time as the long count. They had a very special delay. So let's have a look at exactly what they did. From the alignment itself then, the 2nd of October 3153 BC, they had their 96 days. This took them to the 6th of January 3152 BC. Then the long count commences. When they have counted exactly 14,400 days, they will have counted 2 catons, because a caton is 7,200 days. The long count readout will be as follows. This takes us to the 10th of June 3113 BC. Now, it is at this point then that they begin to count the calendar rounds, and they count a full 22 of them, all in order with no adjustments. They just go straight on and count 22 cycles at the same time as the long count is running in parallel. When they have counted precisely 22 calendar rounds, they will get to the 29th of August 1970 BC. This is the Julian day number here, and you can see this is what the long count will look like. It's very close to 3 baktons. By doing this, they actually achieve 22 full calendar rounds, falling short by 40 days from the alignment itself. 40 days later then is when we have a full readout of 3 baktons here, and you can see we have achieved the 8th of October 1970 BC. So the alignment that we had here, 3153 BC, occurs again here. The calendar has essentially reached fulfillment. Now the calendar round then, in stopping 40 days before the alignment, achieves a very special purpose. It will now have a very significant pause period for some 40 years or so. Again, that's another presentation, but it's a very significant pause period. The long count will continue on even after this 3 bakton is achieved. It will continue to be counted for just a few more years before it too is shut down on a very special day to have another very significant pause, about 38 years or so. But suffice it to say, adjustments are now going to be made very shortly following the alignment here to set up both systems to target the next instance of the alignment, which will be in 627 BC. Now what I have just shown you is real history. The ancient tribes of the Maya and the Aztecs did exactly what I have just described to cover the time interval between the 2nd of October 3153 BC and the 8th of October 1970 BC. They did exactly what I have said and used the long count and calendar round precisely to cover this interval of time here between the instances of the alignment. Now in future presentations I'm going to go on and show you how the long count was used to actively cover the 3 remaining intervals. For the present though, I want to concentrate on some additional alignments. You see, this is a recurring pattern. Between instances of this destructive alignment, however, there are other alignment patterns which also causes destruction. And one may think in particular of Noah's flood as we know it, which occurred between this particular alignment here in 3153 BC and in 1970 BC. And in the next presentation that will be the focus on Noah's flood. And what I'm going to do is show you exactly how Noah's flood itself was targeted using a different kind of calendar. A calendar that was run in parallel even to the calendar round and the long count. You see, what you tend to find amongst the ancients is they had many different calendar systems that they were running in parallel, and this allowed them to target multiple different destructive alignments. When one calendar achieved fulfillment, targeting and an alignment, it then was shut down and the others continued on to go forwards to target alignments still further into the future. So they were constantly updating and modifying their calendars to target a variety of destructive alignments going off into the future, using and reusing their calendar systems as they went. And this is very advanced knowledge, okay? The mystery of world age cycles is all about how the calendars of the ancients were used to target these destructive alignments. Now with that said then, I'm going to end this current presentation here on the long count, and we're going to pick up in the next presentation looking at Noah's flood, a destructive alignment that occurred between these two dates here, 3153 and 1970 BC. Now don't forget guys, links in the description box if you want to visit my website, and of course, to buy my book.